Arcane is basically the origin story of the characters that you can play as in League of Legends. I personally think that the season finale should have concluded the storyline for these characters. Episode 9 opens with the council berating Jace for disobeying orders, but then news arrives that Silco has been found dead.
Jace doesn't take credit for it, but he allows them to make their own assumptions.
Heimendinger is upset that Piltover used hextech's gloves and hammer for military purposes against its own people.
So Mel and Jace say that he is against progress, against safety, and they all put it to a vote and they kick Heimendinger off the council. Jace says that he's going to hold a press conference to communicate these changes to the public and tells the council that he can't stay for the next item, which is Mal's plan to beef up the enforcers. He says that she has his full support and that they vote as a unit from now on.
In the next scene, Victor sits in the wreckage of the lab and is shocked that the experiment went so wrong, but then there's a flash of realization.
The sound of the blast will obviously cause a stir, and he can't be sent to jail.
So he puts on his jacket, he stuffs a hex core and his mining laser into his pockets, and he runs out of the room.
On the way out, he bumps into a security guard and tells him that no one's allowed to enter the lab. As he runs away, he realizes that regardless of the consequences, the experiment worked. His body has never felt better, and no one will stop him from continuing to perfect this new body.
On his way to the press conference, Jace is thinking up a fake story about beating up Silco, and he realizes that now that Heimendinger is gone, he's allowed to debut his creations. He makes a detour to the lab, but the security guard tells him that Victor said the lab is closed off to everybody. Jace pushes his way through and discovers the assistant's dead body. Not knowing what to do, he calls for Mel.
Mel arrives and says that she'll take care of the body quietly.
Jace leaves, but remembers he needs to grab his hammer. As he's going back upstairs, he hears Mel's voice through a hole in the wall that was damaged in the explosion.
Mel is basically discussing how her plans will have to change now, that Silco can't help her with Phase 2, and how she's tired of acting like she cares for Jace. She says she can take over the council now, but needs more time to take over Piltover entirely, before she can continue talking through the details. Someone comes in, and after a little while they leave, and the dead body is gone.
Jace goes to Caitlin to tell her about Mel's plot to turn Piltover into a dictatorship.
And she realizes that Vi was right all along. She says that they can fight back, but they can't let Mal suspect him, so he has to go to the press conference. She'll work on getting back up. Caitlin goes to Heimendinger, and she explains Mel's plan and how he needs to help her fight back to stop her.
He explains how much influence and how many allies she probably has at every level. And he says they can't trust anybody. They have no hope.
Caitlin says she knows some people who will fight back. The scene cuts.
The next scene slowly fades in on Jinx muttering to herself as she builds a rocket launcher. It's clear that she's just as intelligent as before, but she's a lot more frantic.
She's arguing with delusions of Silco and Vi, and even delusions of herself. She reaches the conclusion that she should burn it all down, and that's the only moment of clarity that we can see her have.
In the next scene, we see Jinx terrorizing Zaun. She's specifically going after Silco's allies, but she's causing lots of casualties in her recklessness.
Eventually, Vi shows up with her hex gloves and confronts her. They battle it out, but Jinx is able to escape by setting a timer on a hex bomb and giving Vi an ultimatum. Vi chooses not to chase after Jinx, since innocents will be caught in the blast, so she tries to use her gloves to shield the others.
In the last moment, Heimendinger appears and is able to somehow deactivate the hex bomb.
Caitlin explains that they all need to come together to stop Mel because Zaun cannot win against a militarized Piltover.
Vi wants to argue, but the conversation reminds her of Vander. Vi leads Caitlin and Heimendinger to the Fireflies' headquarters, where they all discover that Echo is alive.
We can do a flashback of him being caught by an ally halfway down the bridge, but the long story short, he's alive.
He would have joined the fight against Jinx, but he's still recovering from some injuries.
Jace gives a speech to the city about how he used hextech to bring down Silco, and afterwards he holds an emergency section at the council and appoints Caitlin as head of the Enhanced Enforcers Unit. Some of the council members protest, but he insists that he and Mel vote as a unit, and they don't want to get on her bad side, so the vote goes through.
After disposing of the body in Zaun, Mel goes to meet with Singed, the mad scientist, to re-establish her supply of variant shimmer to beef up her enhanced enforcers in exchange for legal immunity and test subjects.
Singed agrees, and after Mel leaves, he says, "You can come out now."
Victor steps out of the darkness and says, "You can't trust her."
Singed says, "I know, but nothing will get in the way of my progress." I have a couple ideas about how to punish those who come after me. They raise a glass and Sin says, to progress.
Victor says no. To evolution. They cling.
When Mel returns to Piltover, one of her allies lets her know about Jace's emergency meeting, and she starts to suspect him.
She calls in a spy who has been tracking him, and they have no real intel. Then she calls in the spy who's been tracking Caitlyn this whole time,
And they reveal that Caitlyn worked with the Fireflies in episode 7.
Mel puts the pieces together and says, "It's too soon, I only have a couple vials of shimmer." She calls in her most loyal enforcers and sends them to the Firefly secret headquarters.
Jace is at home waiting to be contacted by Caitlyn when two beautiful women show up.
They say they're so impressed with him, and he takes them out on the town to a couple of parties. A group of enforcers also tag along as VIP security.
And Jace is too oblivious to the fact that Mel is keeping him isolated.
Echo sits at a round table with Vi, Caitlyn, Heimendinger, and a couple of the Firefly generals. They discuss whether they should focus on Jinx or Mel. While Vi and Caitlyn are headstrong with their own respective interests, Echo is strategic and emphasizes that they need to minimize casualties no matter what. He concludes that while Mel is a valid danger, they don't know how or when she will strike, and it may take time for her to finish her plans. When she makes her move, they'll have the full support of the Fireflies. But for now, Jinx is erratic and may already be plotting her next random attack. They begin making a plan to track down Jinx when the HQ starts shaking. The enhanced enforcers are throwing boulders at the HQ.
Caitlyn uses her sniper scope to locate the threat.
And Vi flies out to attack them.
The Fireflies whiz around trying to keep casualties to a minimum. We get a quick shot of Jinx hearing the explosions, and she says,
Someone started the party without me.
After a long coordinated battle, Vi is able to knock the last enforcer into a pile of rubble.
Right then, a Firefly is blasted off of their board by a drone.
We hear Jinx laughing and machine gun fire from behind smoke. Caitlyn snatches their position, but 5 more turrets activate.
Drones fly through the sky, and Jinx speaks through a loudspeaker,
saying it won't be that easy, sis.
Echo gets on his board and says even if he's injured, he can't let his people fight while he does nothing.
Heimendinger reappears and he presents Echo with the Zero Sword, which is powered by a hex crystal that has been engineered to make small fissures in time. It's enough to change a single moment in time, but not enough to cause havoc.
Echo asks, why me? And Heimendinger says that
He watched Echo closely in the war room and was impressed with his mind and his morals. He doesn't want to hold on to such power himself, and he can't think of anyone else that will wield it with as much restraint as Echo. He says go and find the path that others cannot.
As the Fireflies and Jinx's drones are battling it out, one of the enforcers comes back and takes a second vial of shimmer, becoming a huge monster.
we see many variations of this battle as Echo uses the Zero Sword to reverse time, but finally instead of joining the battle, he uses his time to locate Jinx and convince her to attack the Enforcer.
The battle concludes with a huge explosion and Jinx escapes.
Caitlyn convinces Vi that Mel has plausible deniability and they can't just attack her. As the new head of enforcers, she plans to work from within, but she needs someone like Vi who can spot shadiness.
Vi agrees to be an enforcer temporarily, with the condition that he's able to work within Zaun and protect the people like Vander did.
We see a montage of Mel being kicked off the High Council and becoming the new Silco.
We see Victor speaking to a crowd of sick people in the depths of the undercity. We see Jinx pacing her lab and talking to herself.
We see Jace giving a speech to a crowd of business people.
We see Caitlyn giving the speech to a unit of enforcers,
And Vi at the last drop, taking a police report with the hex gloves hanging above her desk. Post-credit scene, Vi is leading a small team of enforcers into an abandoned building. As they proceed, they narrowly avoid several traps.
When they reach the next level, they're greeted by Sins.
He knew they were coming, so he's roided up with a huge shield and a gas mask on.
Vi immediately smashes a wall and her team escapes as a fog of poison gas fills the room.
The camera zooms out and we see the building set with explosions, yelling, and finally various animal howls and growls.